Part 1. The Wrong Kind of Men. In Dayton, Ohio, at the end of the 19th century, no one expected something important to begin in a bicycle shop. The Wright brothers were not poor, but they were not impressive either. They did not come from a rich or famous family. Their father, Milton Wright, was a bishop who traveled often. He was strict in his beliefs, but he encouraged curiosity. Their mother, Susan, died when they were young, and her absence quietly changed the feeling of their home. Wilbur, the older brother, was tall, quiet, and serious. Orville was smaller, more openly cheerful, but just as determined. Neither of them finished college. Neither worked as a scientist. They owned a small bicycle shop on West 3rd Street, where they repaired bikes and earned a modest living. It did not seem like the right background for changing the world. By the 1890s, the idea of flight was not new. People had dreamed of flying for centuries. Many had tried and failed. Some jumped from towers with homemade wings and were injured or killed. Because of this, serious scientists had mostly stopped trying. Balloons already existed, of course, but they could not be controlled easily. Powered flight was often compared to impossible ideas, like perpetual motion. The Wright brothers did not speak publicly about their plans. Instead, they studied. They were especially interested in the work of Otto Lilienthal, a German pilot who tested gliders. When he died in a crash in 1896, many newspapers described it as proof that flight was simply too dangerous. The Wright brothers saw it differently. They believed his work had not failed. It had only been unfinished. Wilbur began writing to the Smithsonian Institution, requesting books and research about aeronautics. He did not describe himself as a dreamer. He believed the problem of flight was not impossible, only misunderstood. In his view, people focused too much on powerful engines and not enough on learning how to control balance in the air. Sometimes customers or friends joked about the idea of flying. They smiled politely, but they did not take it seriously. Some said Dayton was not the kind of place where great inventions happened. Others suggested that humans were simply not meant to fly. The Wright brothers did not argue. They had learned that speaking too confidently about unusual ideas often invites doubt and criticism. So they continued their work quietly. Part 2. Learned Men and Closed Doors. Around 1900, Wilbur made a decision that even surprised Orville. He would speak publicly about flight, not to show off, but to question what everyone believed. In 1901, he gave a talk to the Western Society of Engineers in Chicago. The room was filled with educated men, people with titles, degrees, and reputations far greater than his own. Wilbur spoke calmly. He explained why existing theories of flight were wrong and why progress had stalled. The reaction was polite, but restrained. Most listeners agreed that human flight was interesting, but still far in the future, and certainly not something bicycle mechanics would achieve. Wilbur returned to Dayton without gaining supporters. What he learned was simple. Having a title does not always mean understanding. This pattern repeated itself. Newspapers preferred dramatic failures to slow, careful progress. Editors liked crashes more than calculations. When the Wright brothers wrote to other inventors, the replies were often vague or discouraging. Octave Chanute, a respected engineer, treated them seriously, but even he believed success was still many years away. What made the doubt heavier was its confidence. People were not just unsure, they were convinced. They said the air was too thin. Engines were too heavy, control in the sky was impossible. The brothers did not argue in public. Instead, they talked at home, studying notes, rechecking ideas, testing assumptions. Wilbur believed the real problem was not getting into the air, but staying balanced once there. Many expected flight to be announced by large institutions or famous laboratories. The Wright brothers believed it would arrive quietly after years of being ignored. Part 3. The Edge of the World. Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, felt like the edge of the world. When the brothers arrived in 1900, they found strong winds, sand dunes, mosquitoes, and isolation. They chose the location for practical reasons. Steady wind, soft sand for landing, and privacy. Privacy mattered. It was easier to fail without an audience. Local residents were curious, but doubtful. The brothers were polite and educated, yet their project seemed strange. They carried wood and fabric across the sand. Children watched with interest. Adults assumed the effort would eventually be abandoned. Life there was simple. They cooked their own meals. They repaired everything themselves. The weather was harsh. And the gliders did not behave as expected. The scientific data they had trusted was wrong. The wings produced less lift than predicted. Control was unstable. For a time, Wilbur felt deeply discouraged. In 1901, after a disappointing season, he told Orville that humans might not fly for another 1,000 years. But the feeling did not last. Instead of quitting, they questioned everything. Back in Dayton, they built a small wind tunnel. They tested hundreds of wing designs, slowly, carefully. No one noticed. By 1902, they returned to Kitty Hawk with a new design. This time, it worked. More importantly, they could control it. Flight now felt less like fighting nature and more like understanding it. Still, almost no one paid attention. The world was busy with politics, industry, and war. Two men flying over sand dunes did not seem important. Part 4, December 17, 1903. The morning was cold and windy. The wind was strong enough to make them hesitate. After a short discussion, they decided to try. They had been in Kitty Hawk for weeks. There was no crowd, no reporters. Only 5 local men who happened to be nearby. At 10:35 a.m., Orville lay on the machine. Wilbur held one wing steady. There was no speech, no ceremony. The engine started. The machine moved forward, lifted, and left the ground. It flew for 12 seconds, 120 feet. The flight was not smooth, but it was controlled. That was what mattered. They flew 3 more times that day. The longest flight lasted nearly a minute. Then a strong wind damaged the machine. The brothers shook hands. They took a photograph. They packed their equipment. That afternoon, Orville sent a telegram to their father, asking him to inform the newspapers. He also asked reporters not to publish the story until Christmas. He did not want attention yet. Attention did not come anyway. When newspapers finally mentioned the flight, many reports were wrong. Some dismissed it as exaggeration. Others confused it with gliding. Scientific journals mostly ignored it. Something extraordinary had happened, and almost no one noticed. Part 5. After the silence, the Wright brothers returned to Dayton without celebration. They continued working quietly, improving their machine. The world still doubted them. The U.S. government showed little interest. European critics were skeptical, Scientists demanded proof while assuming none would appear. The brothers were not angry. They expected disbelief. For centuries, people had believed the sky was closed to humans. But the brothers knew the truth. Flight was no longer a question of possibility. It was a question of acceptance. Years later, recognition would arrive suddenly and publicly. But in 1903, that future was impossible to imagine. What remained was simple. Two men had flown. Limits once thought permanent were not permanent at all. The age of flight did not begin with applause. It began with doubt, persistence, and 12 seconds that most people were not ready to believe.